What up? How we doing, Jay?
What's on your mind?
Well, I've had a lot of people tell me that I need to debate you, but I'm not really here to debate as much as just, I put this in the comments. Just educate me on the Trinity. People keep telling me I'm, bagging on it, and my view of it is heretical, so I want, just trying to understand it, be fair.
Well, we can go to the Trinity for sure, but before we do that, can you tell me why I should believe Mormonism if Joseph Smith writes himself into Genesis 50?
Well, I'm not here to debate that. I'm just here to learn about the Trinity.
Why wouldn't you defend? If that's a huge problem for Mormonism, why wouldn't you defend that?
Well, I answered you already.
Why can't, I mean, this seems like a kill shot. So why would I take any anti-Trinitarian arguments from you seriously if you can't explain this one to me?
I'm not here to debate you on the Trinity.
So
I'm here
to learn. Good job. Well, wait a minute. It's a debate stream, so it says debate at the top.
No, I get you. I mean, okay. If you want to talk about it, we don't
wait a minute. You said you want to debate the Trinity, but you don't want to debate it.
I don't want to debate the Trinity.
Why not just debate it? So I'm going to haggle with the word debate. Like, why not? Let's just debate it.
Okay. I mean, I don't think I understand it. Is really that's what I'm told. I often when I post about it, I'm often told that I do not have a correct understanding of the Trinity. So I am giving you the opportunity to educate me on it.
Okay, and we can get into that when I hear an explanation for why I should believe a prophet who writes himself into an ancient text to predict himself.
I don't see how that's relevant.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye. I mean, this is the ultimate kill shot, as well as the Book of Abraham, too. I mean, the problem with the Book of Abraham argument, I agree with Posh, it is a kill shot, but I have to go into, like, you have to go into, like, well, every Egyptologist will say that this is a forgery, and a Mormon will just say, well, I don't care what every Egyptologist says. I mean, it's pretty obvious it's a forgery, but, like, I think this one is just, like, the ultimate. This is the Mormon version of the Islamic dilemma. Like, imagine me writing myself into, I don't know, the Book of Revelation, right? Imagine, how do I know that I'm a prophet? Well, I'm in the Book of Revelation. Here's the copy that I translated. But wait a minute, no version of Revelation before you, Jay, has the prediction of Jay as the final witness of the Book of Revelation. Yeah, but I'm a prophet. So that's why I can tell you that it's there. Well, how do we know you're a prophet? Because I'm in the Book of Revelation. But didn't you add yourself to the Book of Revelation? Yes, but I'm a prophet, so I can do that. This is literally what they argue. And to me, this is just, there is no way out of this one. I mean, even with the Book of Abraham thing, we have to go into, every Egyptologist will say that this is a forgery. Well, won't a Mormon just say, I don't care what every Egyptologist says because Joseph Smith's a prophet. So he can translate these texts that he bought 2 for $1 at a pawn shop. Scott, what's up?
How's it going? I'm a Latter-day Saint, and I'll debate you.
Okay.
I would debate that you have no qualification to call yourself an expert on Latter-day Saint faith, but
did I call myself an expert on Latter-day Saints?
Well, you went on a podcast recently and were bragging about all of the things that you know about our faith. And
did I claim to be an expert on it? Did I claim to be an expert on it?
I think in the way you represented yourself, you portrayed yourself as an expert.
Okay, so your interpretation of my talk was as if I was claiming to be an expert, even though I didn't do that.
That's correct.
Okay, why would I believe a prophet who writes himself into Genesis 50?
Because he restores other ancient scripture that we can demonstrate.
Okay, if there are no texts prior to Joseph Smith that include Joseph Smith in Genesis 50, why would I believe that he's a restorer prophet?
I just told you why, because there are other examples of him restoring ancient scripture.
How does that tell me that, but why does that vindicate this action, which is obviously an action of a con man?
It's not obviously an action of a con man.
Okay, there's no copies of Genesis prior to Joseph Smith that include him being prophesied there. He translates a text that includes 11 verses about himself, and why should I believe that that's an action of a prophet?
What's the oldest copy of the Old Testament that we have? About 250 BC, right?
How does that hurt your case? How does that help your case?
Because it's a long, long time before that Genesis is written. There's a lot of time that things can be taken out.
Okay, and what's the evidence that anyone took anything out of Genesis 50?
Well, I think you have a lot of biblical scholars who will argue that the
Where is the
Deuteronomists,
evidence? You're citing generic scholars. Where's a specific proof or evidence or argument that Genesis 50 was redacted?
I don't have specific evidence for
so
Genesis 50.
So none at all.
But I do have specific evidence that Joseph Smith restored other
Where is
scripture.
the proof? So that's assuming that he's a prophet and a restorer. And I'm saying that why should I believe that he is a prophet and a restorer, first of all? And the evidence that I see is that he adds himself to an ancient text, which is an action of a con man. And there are no texts that have any mention of Joseph Smith prior to Joseph Smith of Genesis 50. And your argument was, well, Genesis is really old, and there's some scholars that talk about redactions. How does any of that prove that Genesis 50 was ever redacted to remove Joseph Smith?
It doesn't prove it specifically.
Oh, thank you. So there's no proof, no argument there. Where's the argument you're going to make? Make an argument, please.
I just made an argument.
No, you didn't make an argument. You just admitted that there was no...
You just keep cutting me off.
You just admitted that there's no textual evidence of any of that. You cited generic scholars. I said, where's the argument that Genesis 50 was redacted?
You can let me make the argument, or we can be done. It's your call.
When are you going to make an argument? You haven't yet. You just admitted that...
You keep cutting me off.
No, I'm not cutting you off. I'm pointing out your arguments are wrong. You didn't make an argument yet.
I have started 3 times.
Where was the argument?
I have started multiple times to tell you.
Where is the argument?
Smith, if Joseph Smith demonstrates that he can truly restore
that's what's in question, dude. That's what's in question.
One instance, please let me finish. Let me finish.
I'm not going to let you say crap that is the thing in question. Your argument is presuming that he is a restorer, and I'm calling that into question.
No, I'm trying to show you evidence that he's a restorer.
Where's the evidence?
He restores. He restores sections of the Book of Enoch before the Book of Enoch is discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Why would I believe that when Genesis 50 has him writing himself into it when no text says him in Genesis 50? You argued that, well, it's been...
I just told you.
Dude, shut up. You said it was redacted. You said Genesis was redacted. Where's the evidence of that?
The evidence is that the Book of Enoch and writings of Enoch were redacted.
Where is the evidence that Genesis was redacted?
Because now we have multiple copies of the books of Enoch that have surfaced.
Genesis. Where is the evidence that Genesis 50 was redacted? You said that there's scholars that say this.
Does Genesis talk about Enoch?
Where is the... Stop talking or I'm booting you. In Genesis 50, you said it's been redacted to remove things. This is the section that predicts Joseph Smith supposedly. Where is the evidence that you claimed Genesis 50 has been redacted?
And I told you I don't have specific evidence.
So there's no argument for that. Correct. Thank you.
There's argument for Joseph Smith restoring other ancient texts. And
I don't accept him as a restorer. I just gave you an argument.
You don't even know about the evidence. How can you?
I just gave you I don't need to, because this argument disproves his prophetic status as he's a con man. This right here.
That's total hogwash.
How?
You're completely unwilling to look at any evidence of his prophetic
I don't need to go.
Of any kind,
that's like arguing
because you say that you can't prove one instance.
That's like arguing that I have to go through a whole person's life and see if they ever said something correct, which I'm not granting that he did, in order to prove that one giant flaw that proves him as a con man is no longer valid. That would be ridiculous. All I need is one. All I need is one. All I need is one instance of him being a con man to know that he's a con man, and this is it.
But here's the problem with that. That's your judgment of him. That's not proof.
Oh my gosh, this is too stupid to even continue with this. So showing you that he added himself is my judgment. It's not actually what he did, even though you just admitted that there's no evidence that Genesis 50 was redacted.
No,
this is too stupid. This is Mormonism. Orthodox Groyper.
Hey, Jay, real quick to that idiot. Joseph Smith actually didn't even restore Enoch.
I didn't think so, yeah.
It was later idiots like him who made the argument that Joseph Smith did certain things in their temple that looked like the one in Enoch. Just telling you that's total loot. You should have let him went on with that.
So what are they arguing? That they argue that Joseph Smith restored the Book of Enoch or
No,
translated
so
it?
he said that he's going to give you evidence that Joseph Smith restored the Book of Enoch.
Right.
But that's nonsense. Joseph Smith didn't even know that Enoch existed.
Oh.
What he was quoting is a stupid BYU article on a Mormon scholar that says that Joseph Smith is a prophet because the way he set up the Mormon temple looked like certain aspects in Enoch.
Oh.
So they think them setting up the temple is
that's the
restoring
argument.
Enoch.
Okay, that's
stupid.
That's totally stupid.
Yeah, that's all I got for you.
No, that's great. So here's an article that comes up by BYU scholars. Joseph Smith vindicated. Book of Enoch. I bet that's it. Okay, so yeah, what a ridiculous argument. So because the temple rituals that are borrowed from Freemasonry have some similarities to what's in the Book of Enoch, Joseph Smith restored the Book of Enoch. What a bunch of frauds, man. The whole religion is nothing but constant frauds and lies. All right. Moving on, looking for people who disagree today. So before I'm ready to keep going if we got anybody else who wants to hop on and discuss. But you gotta have good arguments. That guy didn't have good arguments. You just telling me that Joseph Smith is a prophet, then making a bunch of claims that, well, there's a lot of scholars that say the Old Testament was altered. Okay, how does that help you in Genesis 50? What's the argument or proof that Genesis 50 was actually altered? Because that's what you need to prove if I'm going to buy that Joseph Smith is a prophet and that he was really there in Genesis 50 all along. And he just said, well, Genesis is old. Okay, how's that helping you? None of that's helping you at all. Just totally stupid arguments. You don't get to assert stuff and then blow past. And people say, oh, you're interrupting. The reason that I'm interrupting is because you're attempting to shift away from an assertion that I am calling into question. And I'm not going to let you get away from it. It's a debate trick that people do where they try to talk away from a point where they got caught. And then they want to shift away because that's where they got caught. And then I keep interrupting and bringing them back to it. And then they say that I'm interrupting them and won't let them talk. No. I let you talk. You made two dumb statements that Joseph Smith is in Genesis 50. And we know that because supposedly he's a restorer. That's the thing that's in question. And because supposedly the texts of Genesis have been redacted, and many scholars say this. Okay, what scholar is proving that Genesis 50 was redacted? Well, I don't know. Well, then everything you said is no longer an argument. They're just assertions, you see. That's why I keep calling you back to that point. It is not me randomly interrupting you. I don't have to randomly interrupt dumb Mormon arguments. I'm going to bring you back to the point to show that what you're saying is not an argument. I made many arguments, and you won't let me finish my argument. You didn't make one argument. You made many assertions that had nothing to back it up. That's it. An argument would be something like, Genesis 50 has been redacted, and we know this from the scholarship of Dr. Blah, 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 who has shown that there is good likelihood that Joseph Smith actually was in Genesis 50 because the 4th century text of blah, blah, there's nothing like that. First of all, it's crazy.